Watching you every single day, and every word you say, every game you play, every night you stay, I'll be watching you. Every smile you fake, every claim you stick, I'll be watching you. break, every step you take, I'll be watching you. Every single day, and every word you say, every game you play, every night you stay, I'll be watching you.
Tell me what you want, tell me what you want. Tell me what you want, tell me what you want. Anywhere to find you. Just to find it.
All the night is my world. City lights, painted girl. In a day, nothing matters. It's the night, time that flatters. In the night, no control. Through the wall, something's breaking. Wearing white.
Elizabeth Holmes convicted of duping investors into believing her Silicon Valley startup Theranos had developed a revolutionary medical device that could detect a multitude of diseases from just a few drops of blood. A shock for the French government as lawmakers suspend overnight a heated debate in Parliament over plans to tighten measures against coronavirus. And the authorities in Tunisia say the country's ex-justice minister has been detained as he's suspected of terrorism. Noureddin Bahiri now refusing food or medication after his transfer to hospital. Good to have you with us. We are live from Paris. I'm Stuart Norval here on France 24. So she swindled then private investors, convincing them that Theranos' small machines could run, well, a range of tests on blood samples on just a single drop from a finger prick. Now, though, the company's founder, Elizabeth Holmes, found guilty of defrauding her investors, knowing fully that the tests were flawed. Holmes is convicted on 4 of 11 counts, but acquitted on other counts, mostly related to charges of defrauding the public. Solange Moujin reports for us.
Guilty of fraud and out on bail, Elizabeth Holmes left hand in hand with her boyfriend and parents the San Jose courthouse, where for the past 15 weeks she's been on trial for defrauding investors in her blood testing startup, Theranos. After 7 days of deliberations, the jury came to a mixed verdict. They found her guilty of 4 counts of conspiracy and fraud, but issued an acquittal on 3 counts of defrauding patients and did not reach a verdict on 3 others.
The guilty verdicts in this case reflect Ms. Holmes' culpability in this large-scale investor fraud, and she must now face sentencing for her crimes.
The 37-year-old was once the darling of Silicon Valley, a young female executive in a male-dominated tech world. She had a knack for wooing high-profile investors like Henry Kissinger and Rupert Murdoch. He invested $125 million in her machines, which Holmes claimed could cheaply perform over 200 health tests from a single drop of blood. With her Steve Jobs emulating turtlenecks, her startup was, at its peak, worth $9 billion. But in 2015, all that changed when the Wall Street Journal revealed that Theranos' machines were inaccurate and that the company was secretly using traditional methodology to cover it up. Holmes' fall from grace thrust the tech world's fake-it-until-you-make-it mentality into the spotlight.
I think it's a wake-up call to everybody in Silicon Valley, or to any business owner making representations to make sure that what you're saying is true and that you can back it up, because wire fraud is no joke.
Holmes faces 20 years behind bars for each of the 4 guilty counts of fraud and conspiracy.
A court in Hong Kong has found a 36-year-old barrister guilty of inciting an unauthorised assembly for an annual vigil to commemorate those who died in China's 1989 Tiananmen crackdown. Activist Chow Hang-tung of the since-closed Hong Kong Alliance in support of patriotic democratic movements in China, arrested the day before the June the 4th anniversary of the crackdown last year. Police have banned the vigils in the last 2 years, citing coronavirus restrictions. The Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry says he was targeted in an assassination attempt during weekend National Day celebrations. Henry saying his life was put in the crosshairs. Henry's been de facto running the country since the July assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. The attempt came in a city north of the capital amid clashes between police and the armed groups. Photos provided to journalists showing a bullet impact mark on the windscreen of his armoured vehicle. Now to a shock for the French government overnight here, as the examination of plans to really tighten measures against coronavirus has been suspended in the French Parliament. Now, the aim is to bring the measures in, which include turning France's health pass into a vaccine pass by the middle of January to help slow the spread of the virus. But after a heated debate, well, it broke up just after midnight last night as a majority of lawmakers voted to suspend the session. Fraser Jackson explains.
As France tries to keep its head above water amid an Omicron-fueled wave of COVID infections, the government's efforts to pass fresh restrictions entered choppy waters. They had hoped to push a change to the country's health passport through Parliament, but MPs voted not to extend discussions beyond midnight, likely delaying its mid-January implementation.
À compter du 15 janvier 2022, il sera donc nécessaire, si vous le votez, à partir de 12 ans, de présenter un justificatif vaccinal pour accéder aux activités de loisirs, c'est-à-dire les restaurants, les débits de boissons, les foires, les séminaires, les salons professionnels et les transports interrégionaux.
The changes mean a negative test would no longer suffice to gain entry to these places, but the move has been divisive among politicians.
La transformation du pass sanitaire en pass vaccinal qui fait qu'on ne peut plus avoir une vie sociale normale si, notamment en démontrant qu'on n'est pas porteur du Covid, est à mon avis une véritable stupidité. Et je vais vous dire même mieux, c'est un danger.
Ils sont destinés uniquement à protéger les Françaises et les Français, à inciter aussi celles et ceux de nos concitoyens qui ne sont pas vaccinés à le faire, pour protéger leurs parents, pour protéger leurs enfants et parfois pour se protéger eux-mêmes.
Enforcement of the health pass is also evolving, with the number of spot checks increased and authorities given the ability to ask for ID for verification. But the law may now be delayed, with talks potentially suspended for over 24 hours.
Now, a series of sources say that new moves are underway to release the political activist Rami Shah from detention in Egypt. Now, some saying he would be deported here to France to be met by his French wife upon his relief. Shah is a member of several secular political groups in Egypt. He was arrested in June of 2019 and held in pre-trial detention on accusations of aiding a terrorist group. Peter O'Brien has the story.
After 2.5 years in detention, Egyptian-Palestinian pro-democracy activist Rami Shah is set to be released. He was a figure of Egypt's 2011 uprising and co-founded the Egyptian chapter of the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement against Israel. After his arrest in 2019, he was accused of helping a terrorist organization, and in April the following year he was placed on Egypt's terror list. His French wife, Céline Lebrun-Shaath, has lobbied the French government to pressure Egypt to release him. A few months after his arrest and her deportation to France, she told France 24 why she thought it had happened, citing her husband's vocal opposition to the Trump administration's plan to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the so-called deal of the century.
There is, I would say, a grudge with people who played a role in the revolution, and obviously they had issues with Rami from a long time. We think that what triggered this move is Rami, I would say, very public and passionate opposition to the deal of the century.
Since President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi took office after a coup in 2013, he's overseen what human rights groups describe as the worst crackdown on dissenters in the country's modern history. They say Egypt is holding some 60,000 political prisoners, many facing brutal conditions, allegations that Egypt denies.
Now suspected of terrorism. That is the accusation from the authorities in Tunisia against the country's detained ex-justice minister, Noureddin Bahiri, who's refusing food or medication after his transfer to hospital. Bahiri is also deputy president of the Islamist-inspired Ennahda party, viewed by President Kais Saied as an enemy. Nick Rushworth reports.
Noureddin Bahiri, the vice president of Ennahda, was arrested last Friday. The Tunisian Interior Ministry said then that he was under house arrest as a preventive measure to preserve national security. A key figure in Tunisian politics, he is viewed by President Kais Saied as an enemy. The Tunisian Interior Minister now says Bahiri is being held under suspicion of terrorism.
According to the public prosecutor, there are suspicions of terrorism concerning this case. I had the responsibility of safeguarding Tunisia's security.
Bahiri's family says he is a victim of political kidnapping and his arrest does not respect the legal process. His wife said she is being denied access to him.
He is not being kept in a residence under surveillance, but in a secret place. There are secret places where kidnapped people are kept.
An ex-Ennahda MP said Bahiri's state of health was worrying.
We know that he has started a hunger strike. He's not eating, drinking or taking his medication. His condition is worrying. We have no further information.
President Kais Saied sacked Tunisia's Ennahda-supported government and suspended parliament last July. He presented himself as the ultimate interpreter of the constitution and later took steps to rule by decree. His opponents fear a slide into authoritarian rule a decade after the country's Jasmine Revolution.
Now, calls for more protests against the military today in Sudan. Demonstrators urged to head again to the presidential palace until, as they put it, victory is achieved. Now, it follows the resignation late on Sunday night of the country's Prime Minister, Abdallah Hamdok, who was initially deposed by the military last year in a coup, but then reinstated as he tried to work with the military to restore order. A short while ago, I spoke to our regional correspondent, Caroline Kimio, in Nairobi, and I asked her, after the resignation of Hamdok, what could potentially come next?
As it stands, the main problem being that there are no political structures for the appointment of a legitimate government. Under the Constitutional Declaration of 2019, for that to happen, there would need to be approval of the Sovereignty Council, which was the one formed of military and civilians. However, that was disbanded by the military general al-Burhan. And as things stand, it's very tricky as to what might happen next. He might choose to forge ahead and select a candidate anyway. However, that would likely face severe pushback. One alternative, he might look to seek out some level of civilian involvement in the selection of the new prime minister. However, both at the level of the political parties or even the ones who existed in the former civilian side of the government, or even from the grassroots level, there's unlikely to be a willingness to participate in selecting someone after seeing what happened with Hamdok.
Caroline Kimio, we're in Nairobi there. Now then, they're one of the most recognisable animals in the world, but unfortunately, well, for the worst reason. That's because there are just 2 living examples of the northern white rhino left on the planet. Now, though, scientists are preparing to implant lab-grown embryos to try to save the species from extinction. Fraser Jackson has more for us.
This one is Fatu, and the other one, which one is behind him, that is Najin.
The survival of the northern white rhino hangs on these 2 females. With neither able to give birth, the species would have been doomed to extinction had scientists not intervened. Before the last 2 male rhinos died in recent years, sperm samples were collected, and in 2019, eggs were harvested from Fatu and Najin. Scientists then created 12 embryos in a lab in Italy, which will soon be implanted into southern white rhinos.
The plan is to undertake it in the next couple of months, if possible. Certainly, in the next 5 years, there ought to be babies of northern white rhino here.
But the process doesn't come cheap.
It's a lot of money. It's in millions. It's more than $10 million US. But the technology being developed is quite useful, both for the northern white rhinos currently, but also for saving other species that face the same plight.
The stakes are high for the surrogacy process, with the extinction of the species hanging in the balance. With so much to lose, the rhinos are protected everywhere they go by 24-hour security.
White rhino there. Let's bring you some business news now on the programme. Apple has become the first company in the world to reach a market value of $3 trillion. Now, the iPhone maker's worth jumping really during the pandemic as demand for its products increased. And our business editor, Stephen Carroll, is here to tell us more about it. Stephen, what exactly did Apple actually achieve with this how did it achieve this milestone?
Well, first of all, when we talk about market capitalization or market value of a company, we're talking about the value of all of the company's shares put together. So when a company's share price goes up, its market capitalization or its market value goes up as well. Apple's share price has been increasing pretty steadily for years now, but during the pandemic it really skyrocketed. This was down to more people buying Apple products, whether it was things like Macs or iPads to upgrade their home office, or buying more of the company's biggest seller, the iPhone. Apple has also built up a huge range of services customers. It has more than 740 million subscribers to its services, things like Apple TV. We know people are watching a lot more streaming services during the pandemic too. In the year to the end of September, Apple was earning more than $1 billion a day in revenue. Its share price rose by 45% in the past year alone. On Monday, those shares went over $182.88, almost $183. That pushed the company over that $3 trillion mark.
Yeah, they're scary figures, aren't they? How does Apple's growth then compare to other big companies?
Well, Apple was the first company to pass $1 trillion in valuation. That was in 2018. It was historic at the time as well. It took 42 years for the company to reach that milestone, but in less than 2 years, it went to $2 trillion in August of 2020, and then it was just 16 months to reach that $3 trillion mark. Since the onset of the pandemic, Apple's share share price has seen much bigger gains than the broader stock market. You can see here the comparison with the S&P 500 index of shares in the United States. In 2 years, Apple stock is up 145%, the S&P up by just under 50%. In fact, Apple is one of the biggest gainers on the Dow Jones index since the start of 2021. Now, other technology companies over this period have seen gains as well for similar reasons, more people remote working, etc. They dominate now the list of the world's most valuable companies. By the end of trading on Monday, Apple shares had dipped ever so slightly, which meant that its closing market value was just under the $3 trillion mark. Microsoft is number 2 on the list, $2.5 trillion it's worth. Now, Microsoft actually briefly overtook Apple as the world's most valuable company in October of last year, but the iPhone maker regaining its crown after just a couple of weeks. Google's parent company, Alphabet, Amazon in the top 5 as well. So is the oil company, Saudi Aramco. Tesla is the 6th company in the world that has an over $1 trillion valuation. It's a very small and elite club.
Yes, even more incredible figures. What does this actually mean, though, for Apple, Stephen?
So look, it's a big landmark for the company, right? The company's now worth more than all of the world's cryptocurrencies, for example, and it's roughly equal to the size of the annual output of either the British or the Indian economies. Back in 2018, when Apple got past that $1 trillion landmark, CEO Tim Cook said the stock price is a result and not an achievement by itself. And it's true that it's a reflection of how investors feel about the company. So it tells us they're feeling pretty optimistic about Apple at the moment. Despite that, though, the company is still facing some major challenges. It has supply chain shortages like so many companies. Apple had done quite well to avoid that up until quite recently, but it was forced to cut production targets for the iPhone 13, for example, because of a shortage of semiconductor microchips. Companies also facing increased scrutiny over its behaviour from regulators, over things like the App Store and how it treats developers of apps. There's also the big question of what will Apple do next? You have to innovate to continue this sort of level of growth. What will be the next big product that Apple will come up with? Or will it find itself increasingly facing rivals from other tech companies in areas where it traditionally had dominated?
Going to be tricky for Apple, isn't it? Apple summed up there for you by Stephen Carroll. If you get some quiz questions on Apple, you'll know the answers now. Thanks very much, Stephen Carroll with Business. Let's turn to the newspapers now. Alison Sargent is joining us here on set for that. Alison, you're starting here in France today, aren't you? We've got 6 police officers appearing today before disciplinary committees. This is for potential mishandling of a case of femicide.
This was one of the most appalling murders that took place last year. You might remember this woman, Shahinaz Daoud, was shot and burned alive by her ex-husband in the middle of the street, in the middle of the afternoon. This took place in the Gironde department, which includes Bordeaux. The department's director of public security is now one of these 6 police officers accused of errors and negligence in the case. The former partner of Shahinaz Daoud had already gone to prison for domestic violence. When he got out of prison, he attacked her again, and she did file a complaint with police. Nothing came of it, though, and some 6 weeks later, she was murdered by him. The Parisien writes that the fact that high-ranking officers are now appearing before a disciplinary council is a strong signal and a political one, because Emmanuel Macron, they remind us, had made fighting domestic violence one of the priorities of his government. But a lot of people would say that his government actually has not done such a good job when it comes to this issue. In fact, as we read in The Guardian, on New Year's Day here in France, 3 women were killed allegedly by their current or former partners. The feminist collective Nous Toutes accuses the French government of remaining scandalously silent about these most recent murders. They emphasize that these killings are not isolated family dramas or crimes of passion. They are a systemic issue that does require a larger systemic response.
India for this next story. Sexist violence of another kind, in fact, has been making headlines there. This is about apps that actually claim to sell Muslim women.
This latest one popped up over the weekend. It showed photos of over 100 Muslim women, prominent women with jobs like journalists, activists, lawyers, artists, and then the app claimed to be selling them to whoever bid the highest. Now, as we read in the New York Times, a similar app was actually released in June both of them named after derogatory slang terms for Muslim women, both of them released using the US-based platform GitHub, and they were both quickly taken down. The paper explains that the goal of these apps, of course, is obviously not actually to sell these women, but it is virtual bullying that is designed to threaten and silence them, particularly those who are critical of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, the Times of India has an editorial today calling for punishment for the perpetrators, the people behind these apps. The paper reminds us that the probe into the first app last year didn't go anywhere. They say another failure to do justice will not only embolden mobs, but it will further damage India's reputation for its treatment of minorities. There has been some progress this time already. Police in Mumbai do say that they've arrested a suspect from Bangalore.
UK for the next story. It's a big day for Prince Andrew today. He's trying to get a sex trafficking case against him dismissed.
This is the case related to the sex trafficking ring purportedly run by Jeffrey Epstein. The tabloid The Sun headlines that the judge is making Andy sweat, which is actually a reference to Prince Andrew's claim that he is incapable of sweating. He made that statement in order to counter the story of his accuser, Virginia Giuffre, who described him as having sweat on her. Now, instead, ahead of this hearing, court documents released yesterday show that Giuffre signed a settlement with Jeffrey Epstein. And now, in exchange for $500,000, she agreed not to sue anyone who could be described as a potential defendant. Now, Prince Andrew's legal team believes that this is going to protect him from going to trial. For others, though, it's just further proof that he's guilty. Left-wing tabloid The Daily Mirror here is calling it a secret deal to silence Andrew's accuser. Now, whatever comes out of this case, it does seem that Prince Andrew has already been tried in the court of public opinion. That's the idea of this cartoon by Morton Moreland for The Times. We can see instead of the royal guard saying "attention" when he walks past, it is simply "shun."
No attempts for him. Last story for you now. A rather attentive hockey fan who made a life-saving observation during a game.
She noticed that one of the other team's staff members had a very suspicious mole on the back of his neck. As we read in The Guardian, this happened back in October at a game between the Vancouver Canucks and my hometown's new team, the Seattle Kraken. The Kraken fan, Nadia Papavici, volunteered at hospitals, so she knew what she was talking about. She decided to alert the man, who was not a player, but he was actually the Canucks' assistant equipment manager, and she wrote him a message on her phone and then held it up to the plexiglass. He saw the note, and he ended up getting the mole checked out. It turned out that it was indeed a type 2 malignant melanoma, so skin cancer that's curable if it is spotted early, which it was, thanks to her. He was able to eventually track her down, and then they met at another game between the two teams. That's the photo of them that you see there. The teams ended up offering her a $10,000 scholarship to go towards medical school, which definitely seems to be the right field for this woman.
Amazing that she was just a volunteer as well. To spot it.
Yeah, she's young. I think she's 22 or something.
Yeah, well done to her. Thank you very much, Alison Sargent, with the papers on France 24. Now then, of course, we've all heard of Omicron, but now the people of Washington, D.C., they're bringing you Snomicron. This is a giant and fierce snowball fight, as dozens of snowball warriors split into two sides on the National Mall to really pummel each other with snowballs after a storm unleashed heavy snow on the capital. Federal offices and schools they're forced to close, but snowballs in plentiful surprise, and they named it Omicron. Apparently there's a Facebook group where people get called out, and even their pets joining in as well there in Washington, D.C. We'll leave you with those images here on France 24. More news coming up for you in just a few moments' time. Do stay with us if you can.
As the new year dawns, the Dakar will bring you dunes, drama, desperation, desolation, delight, and distress. I believe I won the Dakar by managing to maintain a cool head. I decided to change. It was a question of objectives. I've always been a person who looks for something extra. Motivation isn't hard to find. Of course, if we manage to win in the years to come with an electric car, it would be amazing. I would have looped the loop.
Avec une voiture électrique, ça serait parfait, quoi. On aurait fait vraiment le tour du sujet.
This victory, I feel so proud and feeling new motivation for new years.
It was one of my best moments in my life. I will be amazing this Dakar.
A short 19k special to determine the starting order on Sunday's first real test, leaving from Jeddah, heading northeast to Ha'il.
So very excited, very nervous to be here and to see everything is a big learning curve, but just super excited to be here and see what Dakar is all about.
It's a mix of emotions. We're excited, we can't wait, we don't know what to expect, it has to start. For me, everything's so big right now. My goal is to learn every day and reach the finish every day. I'm a bit nervous, but it's okay. Let's go for it.
No, not afraid, just excited. Excited to be a part of this event and start my journey.
So excited, you know, you couldn't start it a better way. Really happy to be here, the 1st of January, on your bike, doing what you love. What more could you ask for? Yeah, our expectations always you want to win the race. So yeah, we'll wait and see what the next 12 days of racing will bring, and hopefully it's a good, strong race for us. So need to stay on two wheels and be consistent, and yeah, see where that puts us.
My expectations and feelings, they're really excited. Last year didn't go so well, and the prep with the races leading up to the race were rough. So my goal is to get to the finish. If I can do this, I think I'll do well, and I want to do good for myself, but also for the team, and have a strong race.
The first casualty of Dakar 2022, former free skiing world champion Guerlain Chichery stopped in the stage with an electrical sensor problem. We worked for 2 years. We tested over many kilometers and sorted problems we had, but it's an issue we never had despite the thousands of kilometers of testing. We went in the sand and the dunes, tried all types of conditions, and everything was going well. We just don't know what it is. It's an electrical problem, and it doesn't look good. Since the beginning of the season, I stripped the car several times. I know the evolutions of the car, but on electrical issues, I really can't do much. We had the ambition to battle at the front, so it's frustrating, but that's the way it is. Now we're going to fight for specials if the car wants to run again. We're going to focus on winning specials, and that's it. The podium at the finish is over for us, whatever happens. Defending champion Kevin Benavides made a solid start in the bikes. Despite some opening day nerves, the Argentine finished in 4th place and sits 2 minutes off the lead. Ross Brunch said he couldn't think of a better way to start 2022, and the Kalahari Ferrari also off to a quick start in 3rd. Pablo Quintanilla has really taken to life with Honda, winning the Morocco Rally in October, and he's just a minute off the pace after coming 2nd. But the Stage 1A win went to Daniel Chucky Sanders, his first on the Dakar and surely not his last. The Aussie goes into tomorrow's Stage 1B with a lead of a minute. 60 seconds exactly, in fact, for the Australian, and all the gaps today were multiplied by 5, so there are currently just 3 minutes separating the top 10. In the cars, a truly historic moment, the debut of the Audi RSQ e-tron, the first electric car to contest the Dakar. At the wheel, 14-time Dakar winner Stefan Peter Hansel, and the sense of occasion was not lost on the legend, although he was still able to play a strategic game.
The big emotion was on the starting line, you know, because everybody waited for the first kilometers in the race.
we decided this morning to drive really safe. This is a strategy to be not in the first 10 for tomorrow morning.
Also playing the strategy game but at a slightly higher speed, Sebastian Loeb in the BRX ProDrive Hunter, 5th quickest on the stage. Well, the strategy was to try and manage a good time, to obviously try and have a good position for tomorrow. While some of the legends were keeping their powder dry, a chance for Henk Latiguen to post a 4th quickest time in his Toyota. And Brian Baragwanath to take 3rd in the Century Racing buggy. But for old rivals Carlos Sainz in the electric Audi and Nasser Al-Attiyah in the Toyota, there were no strategic games, just a flat-out sprint, which Al-Attiyah won.
Yeah, sure, you know, you need to win here and then you can choose the numbers for tomorrow, because tomorrow is very important. If you are behind, I will choose the last one.
The top 10 is full of contenders, but it's Sainz versus Al-Attiyah again at the top. This year, the lightweight buggies are split into 2 categories, T3 for lightweight prototypes and T4, still called SSV series. Red Bull Off-Road have 4 drivers all capable of taking the title and end day 1 in the top 2 spots, with American Seth Quintero fastest. Chaleco Lopez is in 3rd, and he won the T4 class last year, but it was the Goxal brothers who dominated stage 1A, Marek beating Michal, with fellow victory contenders Aaron Domzala and Austin Jones within 45 seconds. In the quads, the entire top 5 are all back. Manuel Andújar aims to be the first back-to-back winner since 2012. Chile's Giovanni Enrico was runner-up last year, and he'll be satisfied with his day's work in the sands. Alexandre Giroux has had to abandon both Dakars since the rally came to Saudi, and Andújar started as he means to go on, reaching Hail's 19 seconds faster than the Frenchman, giving him a stage victory to add to his 2 a year ago. The coefficient multiplying time gaps by 5 means Andújar has a 1:35 cushion over Giroux heading into day 2, with Enrico a further minute behind. 1, 2, 3, 4 Kamaz rule the trucks for sure. They dominate the leaderboard at the end of the day. Eduard Nikolaev won, with all his teammates following close behind, as the reigning champions look well set to make it 6 in a row. So that's it for the first day of Dakar 2022. Stage 1B is where the real fun starts, as we travel 333 kilometers in a big sandy loop. Happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. And all hail to those who are on top of the pile in Hail.
I think a lot of people look at Cuba and think about Fidel, Che, the revolution, cigars, old cars, communism, this, that, the third, and it's just so much more than that. Cuba Skate is a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles. We work with a group of skateboarding organizations and corporations and pro skaters and skate shops to support and uplift skateboarding here in Cuba. We started Cuba Skate because we had a really wonderful experience studying abroad here in Havana. Lauren was a junior and I was a senior in college, and we spent 3 months here, and the best part of our time here on the island was spending time with the local youth. When we went back home, we just kind of felt this burden on our shoulders about how can we help out, and I think Lauren said it best where, you know, we might not be rich or super famous in the skate industry, but in America, we have access to everything and an excess of everything. And we focused on that and started reaching out to different skate shops, skate companies, etc. Cuban culture is the way it is because it is an island that's cut off from much of the rest of the world. Everyone's very outspoken, and you walk around and you talk to people. People aren't stuck on their phones. You walk into someone's house, you get a glass of water, a cup of coffee, and it is really that kind of love thy neighbor type of mentality. I think it's important for the growth of Cuba Skate to stay rooted in what the Cubans want. It's not what I want for them, it's what they want. And how can I and Cuba Skate provide the resources in order for them to accomplish their goals? To work and operate anywhere, you need to understand the local culture, and that's always very important. But you also need to break down barriers and misconceptions and things like that. And so a lot of times people said, oh, like skateboarding in Cuba, like, oh, you can't do that, or you can't do this, or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you know, why can't I? I think that Cuban skaters face a number of challenges in the sense of, you know, not having skate shops or access to resources. And on top of that, if they are skating in the streets or in places that aren't the DIY skate park, they get pulled over, they get a ticket, the cops take their boards, maybe they don't get it back. And so a $4 ticket doesn't sound too crazy, but when you only make $10 or $15 a month, that's a big chunk of your salary. There are hundreds of skaters, and they're really good, and they're getting better. But when their board breaks, they might not be able to get another board for a month or two, or until we come back. You know, I've heard stories where they couldn't skate for months because there weren't enough bearings. So it's like you'd have one bearing on each wheel, and they say, se hace más con menos, which translates to you make more with less. We get product donations from a lot of different skateboarding companies. You can't ship to Cuba, so the only way to bring it down here is sending it to volunteers or to, you know, bring it in your checked baggage. So about every trip I'll bring 5 or 6 decks, 5 or 6 pairs of shoes, as many trucks and wheels as I can fit in my bag. It's just at the end of the day, all those products will break, but it's the whole kind of teach a man to fish analogy where instead of just giving away boards, let's bring a wood press so that people can learn how to build boards. Or let's bring down drills and saws and sanders and things like that so that they can learn how to recycle a broken skateboard. So currently we have about 4 or 5 programs that we're really focused on with Cuba Skate. And one of those is our DIY skate park here at Ciudad Libertad. The second is woodworking. And then the third is youth development and skateboarding classes. And so the DIY, I think, makes sense because there are no official skate parks. We found this building 4 years ago now, and we've been building little by little over the years. This has been a great program because a lot of times kids want a new pair of shoes or they need trucks or they need boards. And so at the DIY, we can say, hey, if you want a new board, come mix cement for 4 hours, or come clean up the park, or come do this or come do that. And with your work and the merit hours, you've earned a skateboard. So there's no Home Depots or like warehouse construction spaces that you can go and get materials. So you have to get it kind of black market or in the streets. Let's get the kids to work with Phil right there and Phil right here.
The kids would just go and take down walls and then collect the rocks, and there would be such a community feeling.
We've been building here a few times, and the police have come and said, hey, what's going on? And we say, hey, we're cleaning the place up. We're working with Cubans, we're working with volunteers, we're working with artists. We're building a safe place. You don't want kids skating in the street. No one's using this space, and we're kind of repurposing and reactivating like a warehouse or a space that isn't used. And when you tell them that, and then they see people working together, different age groups, different people from different backgrounds, they're really hyped in. You know, I think that they think that, you know, this is the job that we should be doing, and so please do carry on. This place has evolved a lot over time where it's like what once was a abandoned gymnasium that was full of, you know, kind of troublemakers or whatever else was happening here. We transformed into an oasis for skateboarding, and now, you know, this is our skate park, this is our home. How do we want to do it? What do we want to build? And giving them the resources to do so has been great. I can give one skateboard to a kid and that lasts that kid a few weeks, a month, whatever. Or I could be like, hey, 5 people, let's come build. And now we've built something for hundreds of kids to skate over 5, 10 years, forever. Milo's been really great with the skateboard classes. And I think the skate classes are really important. One, because they're free for the Cuban youth. And it's an opportunity for them to learn how to do a shove it or an ollie or skate switch and things like that. And I think it's also a really good opportunity for Camilo to become and emerge into a young leader.
Esa idea de las clases de skate me gustó bastante porque como para mí siempre ayudar a las personas ha sido como que bastante bueno y tener entonces la oportunidad de enseñarle a los más chicos cómo patinar y cómo hacer los trucos y que ellos mismos evolucionen como que ha sido siempre Ser patinador como que te cambia un poco el estilo de vida y la forma de mirar las cosas.
We are at Orly's house, and at his house we have a wood shop set up where we manufacture skateboards and also recycle broken skateboards. Orly is our director of operations here in Cuba, and that's handling the DIY, that's running the wood shop. Orly is one of the pioneers of skateboarding. He's in a really good space with his family and his grandma. So in trying to attain sustainability, it only makes sense for us to not just give away boards and shoes and things like that, but to teach the skills of how to make a skateboard. And I think there's something very valuable about learning how to make something with your own two hands and then skate it, and you just respect and appreciate the process so much more. This is all the plywood that I brought down. I think I brought this down in October, and he's made maybe like 5 or 6 since then. Every board that breaks, Orly will do something with. We'll make something with the board that Matters broke earlier too. So with a $50 donation, we could get enough plywood and glue to make 5 skateboards. We've made a huge impact, and I think that that's a big splash in the water, but it's still just a Band-Aid. For us to grow more, it's not even getting more donations, but it's planting more seeds for there to be more resourcefulness and the industry to really take off and build sustainability here. So I think for the Cubans to get more respect from the community and the police and things like that, we have to find ways in which we're not arguing with the police officers, but we're showing them that skateboarding isn't a crime. At the end of the day, skateboarders care a lot about public space. They want it to be taken care of because that's where they skate. That's their home away from home. And so if we can shift the mindset of the people that kind of think negatively about skateboarding to like, oh, these young men and women, in fact, are, you know, vanguards of the city or of stewardship of community. If someone wants to kick you out of the spot, say, hey, you know, like, I'm just skating. This is my instrument. This is what I do. This is my artistic expression. So we are at the Playa del Este beaches right outside of Havana, and we came out here to recycle plastics and metal. Skateboarders, not only in Cuba, but really everywhere, care about their environment in the sense that, like, you want to go to a public space and skate it, you want it to be in good shape, you want it to be clean. Earlier this year, Cuba Skate launched recycling programs, and the idea being that we go to local beaches, city plazas, work with the community to collect waste, gather plastics, and take all those materials and drop it off at Estudio 50, where they separate the waste from the trash, from the plastics, to the bottles, to the bottle tops, to the packaging labels, etc. They get separated into 5 categories and then delivered to the recycling warehouse cooperative in Matanzas, where they break down all the materials and then upcycle them into recycled lumbers. These lumbers then become picnic tables, benches, etc., and they're all 100% skatable.
Esto es reciclado de la desembocadura del río Quibú, que es un río de aquí de La Habana. Para hacer todos los muebles usamos 2,5 toneladas de plástico.
Pero esa es una manera diferente en lo que podemos subir la cultura del skate, pero también hacer algo bueno para la comunidad y el ambiente y la playa.
Hoy fue la prueba de fuego, ¿no? Y podemos construir otros obstáculos para los parques de skate. Sí, sí.
Yeah.
Vamos a patinar.
You know, I think that oftentimes when pro skaters come to Cuba, it reminds them why they first got into skateboarding.
I made a skateboard from scratch, and that really made me feel like that was my first skateboard, you know? It brought me back to childhood memories, and I just want other people to be able to skate as well.
When we started Cuba Skate in 2010, there was maybe 20 or 30 folks skating here in Cuba. No girls, really just guys. And now I can say that there's hundreds of skaters in Havana, there's skaters in the provinces, there are young girls skating, there are younger guys that are starting to skateboard. And so this kind of culture and desire has grown. A lot of times in other parts of the world, people want to skate because they want to go pro or they want to get sponsored. And not to say that same desire doesn't exist here, but there is a much more pure desire to skateboard, where there is no access to resources, there are no skate shops, and you see kids skating with holes in their shoes, really chipped up boards, but they're having the best time. And I think that's what skating and a lot of other artistic endeavors are about. Maybe you don't skate anymore, but you became a graphic designer, or you became a photographer, or a filmmaker, or now you have tools to do woodworking. Luis Mario of Estudio 50 no longer skates, but what he learned in skateboarding as a youth fully affects him and influences him as an adult. A lot of progress doesn't happen overnight, and it's having the patience to really focus on what we want to do and accomplishing that mission. You just have to keep on going at it over and over and over again, and it does get frustrating. It is time consuming. You know, this is my life, and I couldn't really envision doing anything else. My motivation comes from seeing like Camilo smile when he lands a trick, or when he teaches a young female skater how to do something, and seeing that, you know, Cuba Skate isn't just Miles and Lauren. It's not just Orly and Camilo. It's, you know, the whole community here, and seeing that growth has been truly remarkable.
Right.
As the new year dawns, the Dakar will bring you dunes, drama, desperation, desolation, delight, and distress. I believe I won the Dakar by managing to maintain a cool head. I decided to change. It was a question of objectives. I've always been a person who looks for something extra. Motivation isn't hard to find. Of course, if we manage to win in the years to come with an electric car, it would be amazing. I would have looped the loop.
Avec une voiture électrique, ça serait parfait, quoi. On aurait fait vraiment le tour du sujet.
This victory, I feel so proud and feeling new motivation for new years.
It was one of my best moments in my life and will be amazing this Dakar.
A short 19k special to determine the starting order on Sunday's first real test, leaving from Jeddah, heading northeast to Hail.
So very excited, very nervous to be here and to see everything is a big learning curve, but just super excited to be here and see what Dakar is all about.
It's a mix of emotions. We're excited, we can't wait, we don't know what to expect, it has to start. For me, everyth's so big right now. My goal is to learn every day and reach the finish every day. I'm a bit nervous, but it's okay. Let's go for it.
No, not afraid, just excited. Excited to be a part of this event and start my journey.
So excited, you know, you couldn't start it a better way. Really happy to be here, the 1st of January, on your bike, doing what you love. What more could you ask for?
Yeah, our expectation's always you want to win the race. So yeah, we'll wait and see what the next 12 days of racing will bring, and hopefully it's a good, strong race for us. So need to stay on two wheels and be consistent, and yeah, see where that puts us.
My expectations and feelings, I'm really excited. Last year didn't go so well, and the prep with the races leading up to the race were rough. So my goal is to get to the finish. If I can do this, I think I'll do well, and I want to do good for myself, but also for the team, and have a strong race.
The first casualty of Dakar 2022, former free skiing world champion Guerlain Chicheri stopped in the stage with an electrical sensor problem. We worked for 2 years. We tested over many kilometers and sorted problems we had, but it's an issue we never had despite the thousands of kilometers of testing. We went in the sand and the dunes, tried all types of conditions, and everything was going well. We just don't know what it is. It's an electrical problem, and it doesn't look good. Since the beginning of the season, I stripped the car several times. I know the evolutions of the car, but on electrical issues, I really can't do much. We had the ambition to battle at the front, so it's frustrating, but that's the way it is. Now we're going to fight for specials if the car wants to run again. We're going to focus on winning specials, and that's it. The podium at the finish is over for us, whatever happens. Defending champion Kevin Benavides made a solid start in the bikes. Despite some opening day nerves, the Argentine finished in 4th place and sits 2 minutes off the lead. Ross Brunch said he couldn't think of a better way to start 2022, and the Kalahari Ferrari also off to a quick start in 3rd. Pablo Quintanilla has really taken to life with Honda, winning the Morocco Rally in October, and he's just a minute off the pace after coming 2nd. But the stage 1A win went to Daniel Chucky Sanders, his first on the Dakar and surely not his last. The Aussie goes into tomorrow's stage 1B with a lead of a minute. 60 seconds exactly, in fact, for the Australian, and all the gaps today were multiplied by 5, so there are currently just 3 minutes separating the top 10. In the cars, a truly historic moment, the debut of the Audi RSQ e-tron, the first electric car to contest the Dakar. At the wheel, 14-time Dakar winner Stefan Peter Hansel, and the sense of occasion was not lost on the legend, although he was still able to play a strategic game.
The big emotion was on the starting line, you know, because everybody waited for the first kilometers in the race. We decided this morning to drive really safe. This is a strategy to be not in the first 10 for tomorrow morning.
Also playing the strategy game, but at a slightly higher speed, Sebastian Loeb in the BRX ProDrive Hunter, 5th quickest on the stage. Well, the strategy was to try and manage a good time, to obviously try and have a good position for tomorrow. While some of the legends were keeping their powder dry, a chance for Henk Latiguen to post a 4th quickest time in his Toyota. And Brian Baragwanath to take 3rd in the Century Racing buggy. But for old rivals Carlos Sainz in the electric Audi and Nasser Al-Attiyah in the Toyota, there were no strategic games, just a flat-out sprint, which Al-Attiyah won.
Yeah, sure, you know, you need to win here and then you can choose the numbers for tomorrow, because tomorrow is very important. If you are behind, I will choose the last one.
The top 10 is full of contenders, but it's Sainz versus Al-Attiyah again at the top. This year, the lightweight buggies are split into 2 categories, T3 for lightweight prototypes and T4, still called SSV series. Red Bull Off-Road have 4 drivers all capable of taking the title and end day 1 in the top 2 spots, with American Seth Quintero fastest. Chaleco Lopez is in 3rd, and he won the T4 class last year, but it was the Goxal brothers who dominated stage 1A, Marek beating Michal, with fellow victory contenders Aaron Domzala and Austin Jones within 45 seconds. In the quads, the entire top 5 are all back. Manuel Andújar aims to be the first back-to-back winner since 2012. Chile's Giovanni Enrico was runner-up last year, and he'll be satisfied with his day's work in the sands. Alexandre Giroud has had to abandon both Dakars since the rally came to Saudi, and Andújar started as he means to go on, reaching Hail's 19 seconds faster than the Frenchman, giving him a stage victory to add to his 2 a year ago. The coefficient multiplying time gaps by 5 means Andújar has a 1:35 cushion over Giroud heading into day 2, with Enrico a further minute behind. 1, 2, 3, 4 Kamaz rule the trucks for sure. They dominate the leaderboard at the end of the day. Eduard Nikolaev won, with all his teammates following close behind, as the reigning champions look well set to make it 6 in a row. So that's it for the first day of Dakar 2022. Stage 1B is where the real fun starts, as we travel 333 kilometers in a big sandy loop. Happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. And all hail to those who are on top of the pile in Hail.
Two centuries ago, Charles Darwin said, "The Galapagos Islands were like nowhere else." But we didn't expect what we would experience in this incredible place. I traveled to Galapagos with Rafael, who is a great photographer, and we met there our friend Erika. She's an excellent freediver and also an activist for environment and animals.
We spent time together exploring one of the richest places in the world for biodiversity. And what we saw is that the wildlife is everywhere in Galapagos.
These islands are located at a point in the Pacific Ocean where 3 ocean currents collide, creating a unique area in the sea where warm water and cold water meet. The Galapagos have their own climate. It's like a world unto itself.
Throughout my life, I've been here many times, and I feel like it's part of my heart.
Since I was young, I've been fascinated by animals. Big ones, small ones, all of them. And I knew that the Galapagos are well known for their high density and fearless wildlife. So it was obvious that I wanted to go there and see it with my own eyes.
In here you have 90% of all the animals around the world in just one single place.
And we also found animal species that you cannot find anywhere else. Like these giant tortoises, which can weigh up to 900 pounds, that makes them the biggest in the world. Or these marine iguanas, which change color according to the season. And all these bird species that have adapted to this environment. But to me, the real treasure of this place is definitely when we put our heads underwater.
Because it's so unique, just at the same time, so unpredictable. You would just never know what you can find.
It was incredible to see how much interaction you can get here with the wildlife. There was this strange but beautiful feeling when we looked at them. We felt like guests in their home.
The Galapagos are unique and amazing, but it's still fragile and unfortunately in danger.
Hey man, what are you doing there?
I'm searching some sea turtles.
Luckily, on our journey, we met people who are fighting to preserve this place. We decided to tell their important story in our next film.
How do CubeSats get into orbit? NASA's CubeSat launch initiative gives CubeSats a free ride on rockets that have room and fuel to spare. It's like a rideshare program. We're already going into space, so your CubeSat is welcome aboard. Once a CubeSat has a seat on a flight, it'll be loaded into a launcher container on the rocket. These containers have a long technical name, but let's just call them dispensers for short. Each CubeSat is stacked into the dispenser like a pea in a pod, with its power turned off until the right time during the mission. After the launch, once the rocket is at just the right elevation, the main spacecraft separates and heads on its way. Then it's the CubeSat's turn. A few seconds later, the dispenser door springs open, and another spring inside pushes the CubeSats free. Each CubeSat's transmitters turn on, and its power and other tools will begin to work. Then your CubeSat is ready for its mini mission in space.
Your father was a great leader. I know you're going to be just like him.
Do you know what a birthright is, Peter?
It's a part of you, like your name.
Sunlord, right? I forget which version of you I've met. Did you do the thing yet?
What is the thing she is referring to?
No idea.
When we picked up your ship, part of me was excited. But then after all this time, you haven't changed.
And now I have a daughter, apparently. 12-year-old daughter. 12 years ago when we...
Peter.
We could not be a more unfit group of people. Starting to feel like we pissed off the whole galaxy.
We can't leave Nikki there.
If we go back, we're dead. We're supposed to be a team. Teams don't leave people behind.
Oh, this is the one where you inspire them.
Because we've never gone this far for anything before. This is about us growing together as a team. Because we are a team. Yes! Hell, we're a family. We're the fucking Guardians of the Galaxy. The most deadly woman in the galaxy just admitted she loves us.
I did not.
You did.
I said I enjoyed your company.
That is the Catathian definition of love.
Hey guys, and welcome back to NASA at Home, where we bring NASA home to you. Today, we're gonna set our sights on the moon. The Earth only has one moon, and it's a rocky, cratered place without oxygen to breathe. And it's about a quarter the size of the Earth. Did you know our moon is the 5th largest of the over 190 moons orbiting planets in our solar system? Earth's only natural satellite is simply called the moon because people didn't know other moons existed until Galileo Galilei, inventor of the telescope, discovered 4 moons orbiting Jupiter in 1610. The Earth's moon is the only place beyond Earth that humans have set foot. Only 12 men have walked on its surface, but we're about to change that.
50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. The trail we blazed cut through the fictions of science and showed us all what was possible.
It's very pretty out here.
Today, our calling to explore is even greater. To go farther, we must be able to sustain missions of greater distance and duration. We must use the resources we find at our destinations. We must overcome radiation, isolation, gravity, and extreme environments like never before. These are the challenges we face to push the bounds of humanity. We're going to the moon to stay by 2024, and this is how.
This all starts with the ability to get larger, heavier payloads off-planet and beyond Earth's gravity.
For this, we designed an entirely new rocket.
The Space Launch System. SLS will be the most powerful rocket ever developed.
And with components in production
and more in testing,
this system is capable of being the catalyst for deep space missions.
We need a capsule
that can support humans from launch
through deep space and return safely back to Earth.
For this, we've built Orion.
This is NASA's next-generation human space capsule.
Using data from lunar orbiters that continue to reveal the moon's hazards and resources,
we're currently developing an entirely new approach to landing and operating on the moon.
Using our commercial partners to deliver science instruments and robotics to the surface, we are paving the way for human missions in 2024.
Our charge is to go quickly and to stay, to press our collective efforts forward with a fervor that will see us return to the moon in a manner that is wholly different than 50 years ago.
We want lunar landers that are reusable,
that can land anywhere on the lunar surface. The simplest way to do so is to give them a platform in orbit around the moon from which to transition.
An orbiting platform to host deep space experiments and be a waypoint for human capsules. We call this lunar outpost Gateway.
The beauty of the Gateway is that it can be moved between orbits.
It will balance between the Earth and Moon's gravity,
in a position that is ideal for launching even deeper space missions.
In 2009, we learned that the moon contains millions of tons of water ice.
This ice can be extracted and purified for water. It can be separated in oxygen for breathing or hydrogen for rocket fuel.
The moon is quite uniquely suited
to prepare us and propel us to Mars and beyond.
This is what we're building.
This is what we're training for.
This we can replicate throughout the solar system.
This is the next chapter of human space exploration.
Humans are the most fragile element of this entire endeavor, and yet we go for humanity. We go to the moon and on to Mars to seek knowledge and understanding and to share it with all. We go knowing our efforts will create opportunities that cannot be foreseen. We go because we are destined to explore and see it with our own eyes. We turn towards the moon now, not as a conclusion, but as preparation, as a checkpoint toward all that lies beyond. Our greatest adventures remain ahead of us. We are going.
We're going.
We are going.
We are going.
We're going.
So if you'd like to be a scientist or engineer working on the moon one day, you're going to need to know a little bit more about it first.
I love to look up at the moon at night, especially when it's big and round and bright, but I just found out that the moon's light actually comes from the sun.
That's right. All solid surfaces reflect light back to us. The moon reflects light from the sun emits the light, the moon reflects it back.
So the moon doesn't make its own light, it reflects sunlight. But why does the moon change shape every night?
The moon doesn't change shape every night. What we see is the moon being lit with different amounts every night, so it appears to change shape, which we call the phases. When the moon is new, there's no sunlight reflecting off of it back towards us. That's why we can't see it. The sun is still shining on the moon, but it's shining on the other side of the moon, and therefore we can't see it. When the moon is full, the sunlight is reflecting off the full disk of the moon, and we see it as a full moon. In between those phases, the moon goes through waxing, which is increasing. It's an old word for increasing. Waning, which is an old word for decreasing. It refers to the amount of light on the moon. So as you see the moon go from full, then it gets a little less light, and so it's a waning moon. It goes through waning gibbous, waning half, and waning crescent. Then it's a new moon. We can't see it. There's no light reflecting off of it. And then it'll start to come back slowly, and it'll go through waxing crescent, waxing half, and waxing gibbous. Full moon always rises at sunset, so if you want to see a nice full moon, go out at sunset. After that, the moon rises 50 minutes later each day. So sometimes you'll see it at night, but sometimes you can see the moon during the day as well. The phases of the moon arise because the moon is rotating on its axis. Rotation is when a body rotates around its axis. Both the moon and the Earth rotate around their axes. The moon revolves around the Earth, and the Earth revolves around the sun.
Whoa, that was some rotation. So the moon, Earth, and sun work together in a system. The phase of the moon depends on how much of the sunlit side of the moon we see as it revolves around Earth. Just like the full moon rises at sunset, the new moon always rises near sunrise. But we can't see the new moon during the day because the side of the moon the sun is shining on is turned away from the Earth at that time. And that pattern repeats over and over again. Here's something you can do at home. Go outside and look at the moon every day for a couple of months. Draw a picture of what you see, then try making your own calendar that shows the phases of the moon. Before long, you'll be able to predict what phase of the moon comes next.
For more information on this activity, check out my friend Lyle's Look at the Moon journaling activity online. Once you've studied the moon, here's a great way to help you remember the different phases of the moon. Let me introduce you to the Moon Cookie Challenge. In this challenge, you'll use sandwich cookies to create the different phases of the moon. Cookies. Right. Anyway, you'll need to be able to identify key phases of the moon in order to complete this challenge. First, let's start with the new moon, where you couldn't see any light reflected off the moon at all. And then there's the first quarter, or waxing half, where the moon was growing brighter. Then the full moon, where the moon was shining the brightest. And last, the third quarter, or waning half, where you were losing light. Try this fun challenge with your family or friends. Give each person participating 4 untouched sandwich cookies, and then each person will create the different moon phases using their cookies. You can even make it a race. On your mark, get set, go. Nice job. If you want to make it more challenging, there are more moon phases you can create. Just make sure you don't make yourself sick on cookies. Now let's talk about NASA's new lunar exploration program. Anyone remember what it's called? If you said the Artemis program, you'd be correct. But how did it get its name, and why is that name significant?
50 years ago, we went to the moon. We called it Apollo.
What many people don't know is that Apollo had a twin.
She was a woman named Artemis, goddess of the moon.
We are returning to the moon.
As a new generation of explorers.
This time to stay.
And to prepare to achieve humanity's next giant leap of sending the first human missions to Mars.
We believe our course will redefine what is possible.
That we would discover life-saving,
earth-changing science.
And that the challenges ahead will inspire generations.
This is our manifest.
For all who wondered if we could return.
For all who dreamed of pressing beyond.
This is your calling.
We go for all of America.
We go.
We go as the Artemis generation.
We go.
So there's no maybe about it. We are going to the moon as a part of the Artemis generation. Did you guys realize that you are a part of the Artemis generation? Now, in honor of Artemis and women everywhere, I think we need a musical break. Oh, well, it says Lindsay performs. What am I supposed to think? Sorry, wrong Lindsay. Take it away, Lindsay. Let's meet one of the many amazing women who work at NASA. She's one of our engineers who works on the new Space Launch System rocket.
I'm Yvette Rivera Ponte, and I'm a project engineer at the NASA Kennedy Space Center, where I support the new Space Launch System. I grew up in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico, and I currently live in Orlando, Florida. My grandfather was the first person to introduce me to engineering, and I discovered I can combine my love for math and space in this field. I earned my bachelor's degree in civil engineering and my master's degree in structural engineering. My advice to students, never give up on your dreams.
It's funny, the moon seems a lot closer than it actually is, because we can see it fairly clearly without a telescope. We can even recognize the craters on its surface on a clear night. Often when we see drawings of the Earth and the moon, they look really close together. Don't be fooled, they're actually really far apart. The moon is an average distance of almost 240,000 miles away. How far away is that? That's 30 Earths away.
The moon is the brightest object in the sky after the sun, and it plays a big role in patterns we see here on Earth. Did you know that our moon is the reason for tides?
That's right. A tide is another word for gravitational pull. The moon pulls on the Earth, but the Earth also pulls tides on the moon. When the water is in motion, it moves towards the moon, and that gives us a tide. The tide also is important for the Earth because it moves water around. When water moves around, nutrients move around, and a lot of animals and even humans depend on having tides. A lot of us also depend on moonlight for navigating at night. It provides light in our night sky. So there's a lot of reasons that we like to have the moon around.
Cool. The moon really does have a big effect on Earth. But how do we know so much about our moon?
Well, people have always looked at the moon in wonder in our night sky. It's so bright and it's so close, and we'd like to know more about what it's made out of and how it got to be there. So NASA develops missions to the moon and to other planets to understand how we all work together as a solar system. NASA has been sending missions to the moon since the 1960s, starting with robotic missions and building to human missions. We sent humans to the moon with the Apollo missions to pick up rocks to bring back to the Earth and to learn about the moon's environment. Since then, we've been sending robotic missions like LRO and LCROSS and LADEE that have helped us map the surface of the moon. We have maps that show us the surface features, the craters and the lava flows. We have maps of temperature. We have maps of the gravity of the moon, and all of those things help us understand what the moon is made out of. It turns out the moon is not dry. It has water on it, actually, but the water is frozen. The water is frozen at the North and South Pole in deep craters that are permanently shadowed. They never receive any sunlight, so they don't ever heat up, and that water can stay frozen for billions of years. We hope someday to be able to go to that water and extract it and use it to live on the moon. Even though we know a lot about the moon, there's still so much more we want to learn.
So as long as we have questions about the moon, NASA will keep planning missions to answer those questions, because the moon is pretty important to our world.
NASA is partnering with 14 commercial companies to deliver science, technology, and research to study more of the moon than ever before. On the moon, we'll also be able to do research that will be vital to sending humans farther into space, like traveling to Mars. You can think of it like a practice space, especially since a round trip to Mars will take 2 years, but a one-way trip to the moon only takes 3 days. We are creating new and innovative technologies to land more precisely on the moon, visit new areas like the lunar South Pole, and do research.
Did you know, here at NASA Langley Research Center, Neil Armstrong practiced for landing on the moon on the simulated lunar surface at our Lunar Landing Research Facility. Today, NASA has selected 3 U.S. companies to design and develop new human landing systems for the Artemis program, one of which will land the first woman and the next man on the surface of the moon by 2024. NASA is on track for sustainable human exploration of the moon for the first time in history. And the companies are SpaceX, Dynetics, and Blue Origin.
Landing on the moon and Mars is tricky. A lander headed to the moon can go as fast as 24,816 miles per hour. Those on their way to Mars might go up to 13,000 miles per hour. To land gently, these spacecraft need to slow down before touching the surface. And if there's astronauts on board, the lander needs to keep them safe too. You can build your own lunar lander with things you can find around your house. NASA challenges you to design and build a shock-absorbing system that will protect 2 astronauts when they land. Now, here are the suggested materials for this activity, but don't worry if you don't have all the materials. Get creative and substitute materials with what you do have. It's all part of the design process and being a real engineer. Just be sure to choose your materials and then only work with the materials you chose. That's part of the challenge. So you'll need some scissors, a piece of stiff paper or cardboard, and a cup. Paper, plastic, just a disposable cup. And then you'll need 3 index cards or 3 pieces of paper that are the size of index cards, so about 3 by 5 inches. You'll want 2 marshmallows, regular size, and 10 mini marshmallows, and 3 rubber bands, and 8 plastic straws. Along with some tape, you'll need about 1 meter of tape, so 39 inches approximately. Now, once again, if you don't have any of these materials, get creative. If you don't have a marshmallow, maybe try using some Play-Doh or some cotton balls. Now, think about what you do have around the house that is okay to use, and you can replace those with the things that you see here. Just as engineers had to develop solutions for landing different kinds of vehicles on the moon and Mars, you'll follow the engineering design process to design and build a shock-absorbing system out of simple materials and improve your design based on the results of your test landings. Consider how you will softly land your astronauts, aka your marshmallows, using the allowable materials. What kind of shock absorber can you make from these materials to help soften a landing? And how will you make sure that the lander doesn't roll while falling through the air or tip over when it lands? The 2 regular marshmallows must be inside your cup. The cup has to stay open, no lids. Sketch your design and assemble your lander. Drop your lander from a height of 1 foot or 30 centimeters. If the astronauts, aka your marshmallows, bounce out or the lander tips over, figure out ways to improve your design. Study any problems and redesign. Then test again to see if your new design solved the problem. Drop your lander from progressively higher heights, 2 feet, 3 feet, and so on. As problems arise, study them and redesign. Then, test again. Share your design with NASA. Snap a picture or video of your spacecraft and post it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using the hashtag #VirtualMoonshot. Be sure to get your parents' or guardians' permission before sharing your snaps online. Or ask if they can post it for you. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Remember, you could be the designer of robotics on Mars or other planets someday. Best to start practicing now. For more information about this activity, you can check it out online with Lyle. Now that we know how to get there, what will it actually take to live on the moon?
We've lived on the Earth for a long time, and we've gotten pretty good at it. In fact, we've gotten so good at it that we've started thinking about living somewhere else. Somewhere like another planet, or even somewhere as close as our moon. Now, one of the reasons we're so good at living on the Earth is that it has pretty much everything we need. Somewhere like the moon doesn't. So if we want to live on the moon, we're going to need to take a few things with us. And what are the 3 basic things we need in order to live? That's right, food, water, and air. Let's start with air. The moon has none. Humans need a combination of gases in order to breathe like we do here on Earth. So what happens when we start running out? We can bring more, but that gets expensive. So we need to find a way to make some more on our own. How about adding some plants? Plants take our carbon dioxide and convert it into oxygen. And as a convenient byproduct, we can eat them too. That helps solve our food problem. But we're forgetting one thing. Both humans and plants need water. We'll bring some to start, and we've come up with some clever ways of recycling. That can keep us going while we search for water or ice. So we have our food, our water, and air. What else do we need to deal with? That's right, the sun. The sun helps plants grow, and we can use solar panels to give us power. But too much sun can be dangerous. On the Earth, we're protected by our atmosphere, so we get just enough sunlight. But on the moon, there is no atmosphere, so we need to protect ourselves from all that radiation. So now we're living happily on the moon. But what happens when we want to do something like order pizza? Well, on Earth, we just pick up the phone. We can do the same thing on the moon, but it's not that simple. We need satellites to make that call. But seriously, folks, our scientists on the moon will be doing more than just ordering pizza. They'll be sending lots of information back to the Earth so we can learn more about our new environment. And when it comes to living in space, the more we know, the farther we can go.
Living on the moon won't be easy, and neither will be traveling away from our home planet. Sometimes I think we forget how truly dangerous and challenging space exploration can really be.
Space travel is hard and unforgiving. It's always been and always will be.
It's going to be hard. There's a new chance of death. Going in a little can through deep space, it's a very harsh environment.
We think you can come back, but nothing is certain.
There are all sorts of challenges we'll face on deep space missions. Communication delays, radiation protection, isolation of the crew.
So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are.
There's never going to be zero risk. When you're breaking the bonds of gravity, that's just part of the deal.
And it is one of the great adventures of all time.
Okay, all flight controllers, gonna go for landing. Retro, go. Fido, go. Guide, go.
That challenge is one that we're willing to accept.
Surgeon, go.
Man in his quest for knowledge cannot be deterred.
Space is not just a destination. It changes you forever.
It'll be tough, really tough, but we have the right people for the job.
We have pressed the qualities for success into system after system.
This country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested.
Pushed our people past every failure we can dream up.
We have never been more ready to meet the unknown.
Through Artemis, we will once again explore beyond our world.
And we will succeed.
Thanks for joining me for NASA at Home, and don't forget to check out other activities on NASA STEM at Home for students. See you next time!
The main danger to stability is terror.
January 4th, 2006, Israel's Prime Minister Ariel Sharon suffers a significant stroke and lapses into a coma. It happens just months after Sharon ends Israel's 38-year occupation of the Gaza Strip and bolts his own hardline Likud party. Sharon's official powers are transferred to his deputy, Ehud Olmert, who later succeeds him as Prime Minister. 1809. Louis Braille, the inventor of a reading system for the blind which bears his name to this day, is born in a town near Paris. 1999.
The one thing you'll get from Governor Jesse Ventura, you may not always want to hear it, but you will get honesty.
Former pro wrestler Jesse the Body Ventura vows to be a straight talker after he's sworn in as the governor of Minnesota. And 1965. Poet T.S. Eliot, whose work inspired and supplied most of the words for the musical Cats years later, dies in London at age 76. Today in History, January 4th. Sophia Manos, The Associated Press.
It's like a road that you travel on. There's one day here and the next day gone. Sometimes you bend, sometimes you stand, sometimes you turn your back to the wind. There's a world outside every darkened door where blues won't haunt you anymore. With a brave heart, free and lover's soul, come ride with me to the distant shore. We won't hesitate to lay down the garden gate. There's not much time left today.
Cease! Samantha?
If you're going my way, well, I wanna drive it all night long. Through all these cities and all these towns, it's hit my blood and it's all around. I love you now like I love today.
Fas, Jonas, hoe lyk dit hier? Is 'n frisbal. Hy is blerry moeilik.
There's no road I can hold, the road's so rough, this I know. I'll be there when the light comes in, show me a survivor. Life is a highway, but I wanna ride it all night long. Woo. If you're going my way, I wanna drive it all night long. Gimme, 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 yeah. Life is a highway, but I wanna ride it all night long.
Maar krijg het niet af. Ja, dit. Sorry, waar kan ik echt af? Sorry. Nee, ze niet een maar niet.
The number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
The number you have dialed has been changed.
shoot for the stars. If it feels right, then aim for my heart. If you feel like you take me away and make it okay. Yeah, you really make me wonder about you. Oh baby, it's hard when it feels like you're broken and scarred. Nothing feels right, but when you're with me, I make you believe. Girl, you really make me wonder about you. Woo! I wasted my nights, you turned out the lights. Now I'm paralyzed, still stuck in that time when we called it love. But even the sun sets in paradise. I don't mind spending every Sunday morning rain is falling out on your corner in the pouring still rain. Some covers, yeah, some look for the girl with the broken Sunday smile. Morning rain is falling. Ask her if she wants to stay a while, and she will be loved, and she will be loved, and she will be loved, and I won't go home without you. I know it's hard to remember the people we used to be, but I am in misery. You say it's too late to make it, but is it too late to try? Why won't you answer me? Well, baby, you are all I need, and darkness, you are all I see. Well, come and rest your bones with me, driving slow on Sunday morning. And it goes like, this love has taken its toll on me. She said goodbye too many times before. Now take me by the tongue and I'll show you all the moves like Jagger. I got the moves like Jagger. Woo! My heart is breaking in front of me. I have no choice. Yeah, I won't say goodbye anymore. Look into my eyes and I'll own you with them moves like Jagger. I got them moves like Jagger. Now I'm at a payphone. I don't mind spending every day all of my change out on your corner in the pouring rain. Look for the girl with the broken smile. Where the plans we ask her if she wants to stay a while, and she will be loved, 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 and she will be loved.
Our studio, and in today's news,